I wanted to make this video to make the distinction clear once and for all because people throw around the word sociopath like confetti. Every ex who broke a heart, every boss who lacks empathy, suddenly they're a full-blown psychopath, right? But here's the thing. Sociopathy isn't even a real diagnosis. It's more like a nickname. The real diagnosis is antisocial personality disorder. And antisocial personality disorder is a lot more complicated and a lot more human and a lot more controversial than people tend to realize. Antisocial personality disorder is defined by a pattern of violating other people's rights or violating social roles and social norms. Lying, stealing, being aggressive, manipulation, or a lack of remorse are common features of this disorder. But here's the key. It can't even be diagnosed until the age of 18. And only then if there's proof of conduct disorder before the age of 15. So you don't just wake up one day antisocial. You develop it over time. And what psychiatry often calls antisocial, society often just calls dangerous. Which, yeah, sometimes it is, but sometimes it's literally just a survival style that has hardened and solidified into personality. Sociopathy versus psychopathy, right? These two terms get used interchangeably, but they're cousins, not twins. Sociopathy tends to form through environmental trauma. These are the kids who grew up in absolute chaos, neglect, or abusive homes. They learned manipulation and defiance as armor early on. Psychopathy, on the other hand, seems to have stronger biological roots, linked to low fear response, reduced empathy, and genetic differences in emotional processing. Sociopaths are impulsive and volatile. They can form attachments, they just struggle to sustain or maintain them. Psychopaths, cold, calculated, detached. Sociopaths break rules in heat of the moment. Psychopaths break them in strategy. And then there's asocial versus antisocial. Here's the part that drives clinicians insane. People use antisocial when what they really mean is asocial. Asocial just means you're not a social person. Someone who is introverted, more withdrawn, or uninterested in interaction entirely. They prefer solitude. They're not out robbing banks or manipulating coworkers or any of the things that you might imagine when we mistake these two words. Antisocial literally means against society. But even then, that is a harsh term, but that is what it means. It's not about being shy. It's about breaking moral, legal, or social boundaries. So when your friend cancels plans, they're not antisocial. They're just tired. So leave them alone and let them DoorDash in peace because what you're saying is not what you think you're saying. Before we diagnose anyone with sociopathy or diagnose them with antisocial personality disorder, it usually starts much earlier than that diagnosis with conduct disorder in childhood. So they've already been showing traits of this disorder throughout their childhood. They've been stealing, they've been lying, they've been using these strategies to cope. That's the pattern of aggression, lying, or rule breaking we talked about before. But here's what's wild. Not all kids with conduct disorder become antisocial adults. Many grow up, get help, heal, and turn that defiance into empathy and strength. The difference between a sociopath and a survivor? Someone met the survivor with safety before the world met them with fear. There's overlap with other personality structures as well, like borderline personality disorder, BPD, shares traits like impulsivity and anger, but it's driven by fear of abandonment. It also shares a lack of empathy with narcissistic personality disorder, but it's driven by fragile self-esteem. Meanwhile, antisocial personality disorder is driven by detachment, by not needing the connection that other people crave. It's not always violent. Sometimes it's just emotionally absent. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's high functioning and successful. The danger lies in the pattern, not the label. Every case is different. Sociopathy and antisocial personality disorder aren't about villains. They're about human beings whose empathy circuits never got fully built or got burnt out way too early. Some were born with a flat affect. Others learned it the hard way. And while psychiatry debates whether we should even call that a disorder, what's clear is this. Every version of antisocial behavior starts as an unmet need. The difference is whether the world taught you to numb it or helped you heal it. So the next time someone throws the word sociopath around, you can correct them. Remember, it's not a synonym for heartless. It's a blueprint for what happens when connection goes missing. They overlap, but they're not interchangeable. And most importantly, not all people with antisocial personality disorder or sociopathic traits are violent. Many are survivors of early neglect, attachment loss, or systems that taught them hardness instead of safety. And maybe just having really cold parents who don't show emotion. Something as simple as that. Something as simple as having extremely cold caregivers could lead to this. Clinically speaking, antisocial personality disorder is the official diagnosis in the DSM-5. Sociopathy and psychopathy are unofficial terms, more descriptive, often used in forensic psychology or in pop culture. Like, oh, he was a psychopath, that kind of thing. Antisocial personality disorder is defined by a pervasive pattern of violating others' rights or social norms, deceitfulness, impulsivity, aggression, violence, irresponsibility, and a lack of remorse and lack of accountability for their actions. And this must begin after age 18, but with evidence of conduct disorder before the age of 15. It's more about behavioral patterns than inner emotion, how someone acts in the world. So sociopathy isn't in the Purple Book, but is often used to describe a subtype of antisocial personality with environmental roots. Sociopaths are thought to develop from trauma, abuse, or social conditioning otherwise. They often have some conscience, but it's inconsistent. They might rationalize cruelty or loyalty selectively, depending. They tend to be impulsive, volatile, and emotionally reactive. So think of sociopathy as learned antisociality, and it's like the brain that has been shaped by survival and chaos, if that makes sense. And then again, psychopathy is more about personality and neurology than learned behavior. Often calm, calculating, emotionally cold, low physiological arousal, and empathy that starts from birth. It is more genetic or neurological in origin. All three overlap, but not all sociopaths are psychopaths. And not all people with antisocial personality disorder are sociopaths. And then asocial means you're not a social person. You're someone who avoids social interaction altogether, prefers solitude, or just isn't interested in other human beings or others. Common in introversion, depression, or autism spectrum traits. This does not imply hostility, danger, or manipulation to any degree. Asocial equals withdrawn. Antisocial equals against society's rules. Borderline personality disorder, which is intense emotions, fear of abandonment, and impulsivity, can look similar when anger or impulsivity dominates, but it's driven by attachment trauma, not by disregard for others, and that's the difference. Narcissistic personality disorder is similar because of like the grandiosity, the need for admiration, lack of empathy, and it overlaps with psychopathy, but with fragile self-esteem underneath. Narcissists crave validation. They have low self-esteem. Psychopaths often don't care at all. Conduct disorder in children, which is the developmental precursor to antisocial personality disorder. If untreated, it can evolve into sociopathic or antisocial traits, but not always. Does that make sense? In short, once again, let's run back a third time. Sociopathy is a cultural term. It is a trauma-shaped antisociality. Antisocial personality disorder is the clinical diagnosis that describes those behaviors of sociopathy. Asocial means you are socially withdrawn, not hostile, not dangerous. You just prefer to not be around people. You like your own space. And then psychopathy, which is neurological cousin of antisocial personality disorder with colder traits. They overlap, but they're not interchangeable. And most importantly, not all people with antisocial personality disorder or sociopathic traits are violent. Many are just survivors of early neglect, attachment loss, or systems that taught them hardness instead of safety. Okay, we're laying that baby to rest. I hope you guys have a good day. Thanks for being here. Bye.